So the first major difference between Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama and the pseudo-Salafi movement, which has its roots with Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, the first major difference is regarding the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How? Whenever in Al-Qur'an al-Kareem you have words like yad, which means hand in Arabic. You have words like qadam, which means foot. You have words like ayn, which means eye. You have words like wajh, face. When these words are ascribed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the way of the pious predecessors was to leave the meaning to Allah, while negating that this meaning, while negating for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala any resemblance to His creation. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. There is nothing like Him, yet He is all hearing and all seeing. So they would negate any likeness of creation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one of the attributes that the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama affirmed for Allah. Al-mukhalafatu lil-hawadith, which means what? Opposition to the contingent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bears no resemblance to creation. This is the first difference between Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama and the Salafi movement. This is why Abdul Rahman Hassan refused to debate the issue of al-asma' wa sifat, because he knew that there would be major shame on the pseudo-Salafi movement when their anthropomorphism, meaning their likening Allah to creation, would be exposed. So this is the first major difference. Whenever we come across verses in the Qur'an that if they were taken literally, a person would make some resemblance of creation to Allah, this pious predecessors, the Salaf, as-Salafu salihun, they would leave the meaning to Allah. This was known as tafweed. This is a major difference, and this is one of the subjects which is debated, meaning they write books, the pseudo-Salafi movement write books which confuse people in order to say that the early predecessors did not leave the meaning to Allah, but they would take the literal meaning. So they would say hand means hand, as in a limb, but we leave the details to Allah. But the pious predecessors would negate a limb for Allah, meaning they would not believe Allah has an appendage or bears any resemblance to creation. Likewise, the disputes that occurred in the Indian subcontinent in the 1800s, the principal disputes were not regarding peers, whether you should have a peer, a spiritual guide, or whether you should wear ta'weed, an amulet, or whether you can circumambulate graves. These were not the principal issues. The principal issues first debated, even though circumambulating graves is prohibited, haram in Sharia. But the principal issues were relating to the divine attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why I believe today all the scholars of the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, it is an obligation upon them to teach the public works like a Sanusiya, the Sanusi Creed, the divine attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of the mass ignorance amongst the public regarding the divine attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.